Good morning. Are we on? I didn't see anything. I didn't hear anything. I'm busy playing. We are on. Well, what a great way to start, you guys. I'm busy doing things. We're so excited because we're in a new configuration. Good morning, Susie. So thrilled to have you here with us. Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. Let me start completely over. I just got a message from my computer that it's not going to let me look at something that I wanted to look at while I was presenting to you. But it's okay because Traven has it, so it's not a thing to worry about. But, you know. Anyway, I'm Shannon Penrod, and you're watching Autism Live. We thank you so much for being here with us. We're live right now, in case you didn't realize. And I'm excited because today we've got a big show for you. For a lot of you, your kiddos went back to school last week, or even today was the first day back at school, or you're going back in the next couple of weeks. And a couple of weeks ago, we did a whole show about getting ready to go back to school. And I wanted to make sure that right around this time that we did another one of our parent-to-parent talks with you about what really is going to happen at school and put some things into your backpack as a caregiver or as a student. If you're a student who's on the spectrum and going back to college, we wanted to make sure that we put some things in your backpack that maybe just would have made you go, and have anxiety back in the fall, but starting right now, wherever you are in the process, there are some things that you can do. So we're going to be talking about autism in school. I'm saying good morning to Christina and to Parker. Parker, it is not too late to send in stuff for stories on the spectrum. In fact, we need to be making more announcements about that. For those of you who are liking and grooving on our new show, Stories from the Spectrum, it's my whole heart, right? It's all content created by individuals who call themselves either on the spectrum, have autism, are autistic, or consider themselves neurodiverse. So all of the content is created by them. They get their own voice to be able to say what they want to say, and myself and Dr. Grampiche are serving as the executive producers for it to make sure that it happens, but all of the content is created by people who are on the spectrum. We're just creating the space in which for those shows to live and curating a series. Each show that you watch, there's between 4 and 10 different voices from the spectrum who are telling their stories in the way that they want to tell them. And we are looking for more people who want to create content for that. So if you're interested in that, or you have someone that you love that is a filmmaker or an artist or somebody who has a voice, and I say voice in the metaphysical sense, not the actual spoken, if they have, because we know that even if you are not able to speak, you have something to say, right? So we are looking for more people to contribute to that. So Parker, please, you can send all of that off to me, Shannon at autism-live.com. I'm also saying good morning to Caitlin, who is saying that no, she's Denise. I'm all good with that. I'm thrilled that you're here. Sending you hugs too, Christina. Lisa, good morning. Okay. Oh, Caitlin, I'm glad that you're here because I see that it's not Caitlin, it's Denise. Denise, I'm glad that you're here because you've already got some negativity with the new teacher. Oh, we really want to talk about that. Liliana is writing in from Riverside, and it's a Fragile X counts, so Denise, no need to, great to be here. If you have a child that's diagnosed with Fragile X, you have your place at this table as well. Okay, wonderful. Wonderful, and I see that Lisa, you're writing in about you're interested in sharing Josh's story on the spectrum, age 8. And I would say to you, we have many different shows now here on the Autism Network and many different ways to tell stories. If you want to tell a story about someone that you love on the autism spectrum, we have all kinds of room for that, especially on Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. We do our family portraits, autism family portraits. We'd love to have you on to talk about the person that you love in that format. But when we talk about stories from the spectrum, it's all directly from them. So, if you want to, 8 is a little young because then you have to consider, are they going to want that out there later on? It is something to be considered, but if your 8-year-old wants to do a video, we have animators and kids who are comfortable being on camera and want to talk about themselves. We've done that before. We're happy to entertain that for Stories on the Spectrum. Love, love, love that Denise says, grandmother and caregiver. Boy, have we got a place here for you. And Natalie says she's listening from Kingston, Ontario. And Lisa, great, you're writing a book about it. Wonderful. Come here and talk about it. Okay, fabulous. But remember what we say, even if you're non-vocal, right? Everybody has something to say. So I do want to say that we are live right now. And for those of you who are like, hey, how is that happening? How are those people writing in and she's able to respond to them? We're live right now on Facebook, on YouTube, Twitter, and about a dozen other sites. Traven is going to show those to you if he hasn't already. And those are all places that you can watch the show and ways that you can write in. But live right now, if you're on Facebook, on Twitter, hello, Dark Angel. We invite you to write in and have your voice be heard here too, because for me, this is a conversation, right? That's the part of this that I really love, is that it's such a privilege to be a part of this community. For those of you who don't know, maybe you're tuning in for the first time, I now describe myself as a pony because I secretly love that. That stands for a parent of a neurodiverse individual. And my son, who was diagnosed at the age of 2.5, who had language, then lost virtually all of it. He was considered functionally nonverbal. He was able to say, I think, 2 words we were left with that weren't functional. Like he would just say dog, 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 dog for hours on end. And then we were very lucky because we found out about great treatment and we started ABA therapy intensively. And it was really good quality ABA therapy. And my son is now 19 years old. He is a sophomore in college on the dean's list with absolutely no accommodations, which I attribute to what we did and how we worked the school system, which is why I want to do this talk with you today. But I couldn't be prouder of the young man that my son is. And he now identifies as himself, right? But when push comes to shove, he identifies as being neurodiverse. And I know that that starts a firestorm. People have lots of opinions, but I'm telling you, that's how he identifies. So if that doesn't jive with you, if you choose other words, boy, we welcome you to choose other words, but that's how he identifies. In any case, that's why I'm here. That's why this is important to me. That's why it's important to me to interact with you guys and to hear from you. So I love the conversation. We're going to get started on the school conversation. I'm not even going to do jargon of the day today, but if you were watching last week, I said to you that today we were going to have a really important announcement. And if you watch the show at all, you know, as I just said, that our whole mission here, it's important to me that we are providing information to you that's good information that could be critical to your well-being and to the well-being of the people in your family that you care deeply about. And so I have a message here that I feel is so important that I wanted to showcase it. And it's something that we're going to be talking about a lot here. You may remember that a couple of months ago, we covered a story in the news about a study that suggested that babies exposed to acetaminophen during pregnancy have a significantly higher risk of being exposed to acetaminophen during pregnancy, later on. So now it's important that I tell all of you that research is ongoing, but this is really significant. And Traven, if you want to hold off on that for just a second here, because I want everybody, I'm going to give you this information and then we're going to put this up on the screen again when I'm done with that. But I want you to know that this study that was done, this is not some fly-by-night kind of thing, right? This was funded by the National Institutes of Health, and it was conducted at Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. So this is significant. And as a result of this study, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration urges careful consideration before using any pain-relieving products during pregnancy. This is such important information that we need to be sharing with all of the women in our lives. And letting them know that this is a concern. But I get goosebumps when I think about what about those of you who may have been, you were urged by your doctor to take acetaminophen, or products containing acetaminophen like Tylenol or Excedrin during your pregnancy, and now you have 1, 2, 3, maybe even more children who are on the autism spectrum. What can you do now? And I'm so glad that you're here because we have this really important message, and it's something that you can do today and something I want you to share with other people today. Okay, here's the message. If you or a loved one use Tylenol or other medications containing acetaminophen while pregnant and later gave birth to a child diagnosed with autism, you may be entitled to financial compensation. The law firm of Shapiro Legal Group is now evaluating potential legal claims by parents of autistic children. I urge you to call Shapiro Legal Group. They're now evaluating the potential claims by parents of autistic children, and I urge you to call today to see if you qualify for financial compensation. And please spread this message to your friends in the community who might be unaware. This is super important. I also want you to know that there are deadlines, time deadlines to file a claim, so I urge you not to wait. You can call Shapiro Legal Firm for, let me stop for a second. You can reach Shapiro Legal Group at 888-657-0455. Again, that number, and we're going to be sharing this with you on a regular basis, 888-657-0455. You can also reach Shapiro Legal Group by going to their website and filling out a form at shapirolegalgroup.com/autism. I also need to read this to you, that Shapiro Legal Group, PLLC, associates with attorneys throughout the country to help people nationwide, is licensed in New York and Washington, D.C., and has its principal office at 60 East 42nd Street, New York, New York. And I need to make sure that you know that this ad was read by a non-attorney spokesperson. I think that you guys know that I am a non-attorney, but I am excited to be a spokesperson for this class action lawsuit. So I urge you, please, please, please call that number. Do I need to give that again? Should I give that again? One more time. 888-657-0455. 888-657-0455. And if you missed that, it's on the podcast. I'm going to ask you all, please share this. Share this with the people that you love. It could be really super important for somebody down the road. All right, moving on. It's time to talk about school. And because it's back to school time, and if you think about it, this is where there's a great potential for success to be supercharged at school, or there is a great potential for things to fall apart, because how many hours a day is your child going to go to school? There's also safety concerns too, that we want to make sure that your kiddo is safe in school and that things are happening the way they're supposed to be happening. You know what I always say, and I didn't make it up, is that if you fail to plan, you plan to fail, right? And I think the more people you put on a project, the more important that there be a plan and that the plan be communicated effectively. And the place that I always want to come from as a parent is that the thing that I used to say to people a lot of times, that I go, I'm sorry, when did you vote me off the team? Because even though our child is at school, we're on that team. You are on that team, and it's important. And by the way, your kiddo is on that team too. And don't let anybody tell you anything different. So let's go ahead and okay. Here's one of the single most important things that I think we need to get clarity about. What is the mission here? And you see here, this is a much talked about pictograph, infograph. Oh, thank you, Traven. Look at that. I love being in the corner here. So this is the difference. If you see the first picture, it's if the playing field was level. Look at the three kiddos standing and watching the baseball game. And they're all standing on a box to see over the fence, right? But one kid is tall enough that he gets a really good view of everything. And one kid is, not as tall, through no fault of his own, right? And he has a partial view, but he can't see everything that the other kid can see. And for the last kiddo, he's missing out on the whole baseball game simply because he's not tall enough. Now, this is not what equality looks like. This is not what justice looks like. And so what we're talking about when we talk about what does it need to look like at school is the second picture. You see that for one kiddo, he needed the box to be able to see, and the other kiddo needed 2 boxes to be able to see. And that really, in truth, the first kiddo didn't need a box at all. And this is what school should look like. Which box does your kiddo need? Which box do you need? What do you need to be able to see, to be able to watch what's happening and to participate fully as an audience member in this instance? But what do you need to be able to participate fully? And whatever it is that you need is what we have to be fighting for to make happen. Yeah? This is what we're going for. And if you are in a meeting with school and you feel like someone doesn't get this, it's time to fall back, regroup, and see, check out what your rights are legally and move forward. Okay. And yes, I did, Denise, I did say that pony means a parent of a neurodiverse individual. That's what a pony is. Okay. So one of the first things that we want to talk about, I already brought up the term IEP here. But when your kiddo starts school, more and more we're seeing this, that your kiddo, you might be offered nothing, you might be offered an IEP, or you might be offered a 504. And so I think it's just important to talk a little bit about the difference between the IEP and the 504. So an IEP comes under the auspices of IDA. It's the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. And it provides services and accommodations. And there may be a behavior intervention plan or an individual transition plan attached. We're going to talk a little bit about those two things a little bit later on. Don't get panicked about the jargon. I'm going to make it all clear for you. But if you have a younger kiddo, chances are that they're going to need they have any challenging behavior that's preventing them from learning, which is most of our kiddos. In fact, it's most kiddos in whether they have a diagnosis or not. But if your child has a diagnosis, they're entitled to a behavior intervention plan, which is a plan to figure out what to do about that challenging behavior to get them back on track. And if you have a kiddo that is over the age of 14 in some states, over the age of 16 in all states, you absolutely need that individual transition plan attached to your IEP. We'll talk more about that in a second. In order to get an IEP, you must have a qualifying diagnosis, which, we have a slide later that autism is a qualifying diagnosis. And if you have a qualifying diagnosis, then under IDEA, your child has a right, or you, depending on, because you're, a part of the team too, if you're the student, they have a legal responsibility, the school, to provide FAPE. FAPE stands for Free, Appropriate Public Education. And so that's those boxes, figuring out what is appropriate for you, and it has to be free, and it has to be available to you in a public forum. And if it isn't, then they have to pay for it to be someplace private. So you are still entitled to it for free. So that's that's IEP, all under the auspices of legal IDEA. 504 plan is not under the auspices of IDEA. It's under the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act. A whole different consideration. Notice that it provides accommodations, but it does not provide services. You still have to have a qualifying diagnosis. It also seeks to level the playing field, but it doesn't have to provide services. So, it might be an accommodation like a ramp or more time studying for a test, but it's not going to provide services like occupational therapy, and it's not going to provide an aid and those kinds of things. So a really important distinction. Now, two things I want to say right here. Some of you are going to be told, now this is the way schools are always finding legal people who can help them to skirt around these things, and there's a reason why. We'll worry about the reason why later. We just don't want to allow it. If you have a kiddo who needs something to level that playing field, then we just forge on. And the law is there on your side. So you just got to get savvy about what are the end runs that they try to do. A lot of parents are telling me that they're telling, even though your child has a qualifying diagnosis for autism, they come back and tell you, no, but you don't qualify for an IEP because there's no educational need. And I'm just going to cry horse hockey right here. if somebody is saying that to you, it's time to regroup and get really up to date on what your legal rights are, because they're trying to make sure that your child doesn't cost them anything, and that is not appropriate. If your child has a qualifying diagnosis, and again, autism is, and Fragile X is, then you are entitled to an IEP or a 504, and I'm going to encourage you to be in an IEP for all the years you need to be until you're 100% convinced that you don't need the services anymore. And that may be never, and that's okay. Like, have your child graduate with an IEP. So okay, right? So much better than not. So don't have them, because they'll try to negotiate you down and go, oh, well, he or she doesn't have an educational need. No, that's not true. If you need help identifying what the educational need is, write to me and I'll help you identify it. Your child can be a straight A student in AP classes and still need an IEP because they're having trouble socializing and they can't make friends. And yes, an IEP can cover that. When people tell you that it can't, they're either not up on what they need to know or they're trying to get around you. We're not letting anybody get around us, right? We're warriors. Okay, so get the IEP. Don't let any push. And if you push and they're like, all right, well, we see that maybe they do need some accommodations, we'll give you a 504, not the IEP. I would tell you to push for the IEP. Push, 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 push. They're trying to save money. Don't let them. That is not your issue to deal with right now. Your issue to deal with is to fight, fight, fight for your kid, very politely, right? But fight for them. Okay, let's move on here to the next. So I mentioned before that autism is a qualifying diagnosis, and I've given you the actual language here on the slide. Disability, this is, and I say it right there, it's poo. There's no educational need. The current law says disability is a natural part of the human experience and in no way diminishes the right of individuals to participate in or contribute to society. Can I get an amen? Improving educational results for children with disabilities is an essential element of our national policy of ensuring equality of opportunity, full participation, independent living, and economic self-sufficiency for individuals with disabilities. So if they come back and they say, oh, there's no educational need, really? Is your child already able to live independently? No. But are they on track? Well, why don't we put in some goals about that? Are they on track to have a job, which means that they can work on a team? Oh, well then no, we better put that IEP in place, right? Full participation, are they completely mainstreamed and able to participate on a team with other kids who are neurotypical? If they're not, there should be an IEP. So this poo about educational need, I think all of our kids, listen, you want to know the truth, all of us, if it wasn't a qualifying diagnosis, all of us could qualify for help and support in one of those areas, every single stinking one of us. So when you pair that with a qualifying diagnosis, they're entitled to it, and don't let anybody tell you different. I'm just reading. Denise said they did give me accommodations, but said that they didn't have transportation to another school. Well, wait till we talk about least restrictive environment, because we're going to talk about that. If they don't have transportation for them to go to the appropriate school, then they have to pay for it. And that means if they have to pay you to transport your child to the school, well, then they're going to have to take out the checkbook, or they have to contract with someone who can. That is not a reason to discriminate and have them not get their education. It kills me what these people will say to parents. And you know what? Here's the thing, you guys. On day one, we are all fresh babies who want to believe in this just world where school is going to welcome our kids and go, and we have just the thing for you, and then follow through on it. And it's such a disappointment when we find out, oh, the thing that they said was perfect for my child is the thing that they have on a cookie cutter sheet for every child. It's not individualized. It's not right for my child, and we get disappointed. What? Oh, Denise says they wanted to make me drive 6 hours away. Well, they can't make you do that. It might be time to lawyer up, and we have a slide about that. So they're pushing your buttons, and they're trying to get one over on you. But they are not in the right. They are legally wrong, and they know it, unless they are criminally not aware, and they should be. So push them, push them, push them. They can't make you do that. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more. Since I'm advocating, and I think most experts will advocate for you to go the IEP route. There are exceptions, but I think it's only if your child is about to graduate with honors that you should look at the 504. Can I say that? I'm sure that there are other extenuating circumstances, but don't, if you've got a kiddo on the spectrum who's in grade school or even junior high, do yourself a favor, push for the IEP. Okay, so what I've done here on this slide, and we can make this whole presentation available for you because it's got interactive links on it. The IEP, as I mentioned, is part of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and I worked really hard to find that website because in recent years it has become more and more difficult to find the information. You know, this information used to be everywhere. And then I will say to you that it has become increasingly harder to find on the web. You'll find people who will interpret it for you left, right, and center. There's a million websites who will say, well, what it says is this. It's the only place where you can really find where it actually says what it says is on that website, if it's still there, because they move things around, which makes me paranoid, concerned, world weary, yeah, all of those things. In that, you will see it's full of stuff and it's dense and nobody wants to read it, right? But you'll see that there's Part A of IDEA, and that's general provisions. You can read that if you want to, but Part B, I've underlined it because it's the important part for when your kiddo is in school. It's worth a read when you've got nothing else to do. And then there's Part C, which only deals with services from birth to age 2, because at age 3, your child is entitled to educational support in the United States from your local school at age 3. Now, you may not like what they're offering and it may not be appropriate, and that's a whole other fight, right? But for those of you who are like, well, you know, we're not even dealing with the school until later because we've made the decision to go all in on the ABA, I support you in that choice. But there are other things that you can be getting from the school district before your child actually goes to school to help ramp up that don't have to conflict with your ABA if you're smart and savvy and playing the game right. Because you can be getting speech and OT on the side of your ABA and having school pay for it even while your child isn't going to an actual physical classroom. But you're going to have to fight for it because they're going to want the funding of your child being in the classroom. And they're going to fight you and coerce you and tell you it's where your child belongs, right? But be aware that there are services available to you there. Okay, let's move on to our next slide here. Okay, so I mentioned FAPE. FAPE is that free appropriate public education. And there's a couple of different steps to this. And I think, first of all, it's important, the first thing that you want to memorize, and this is the order that I did it, was, okay, I got to remember, free appropriate public education, free appropriate public education. Now, the free part is like, whoo, I didn't know, right, when you don't know. The appropriate is the hard part. Public education, I think we all understand that, but the appropriate is the one that everybody fights over. The Supreme Court is fighting over this, right? What is appropriate? And it's not a one-size-fits-all, but you should know that the Supreme Court in recent years, look at me, I'm surfing. In recent years, the Supreme Court has not fully defined appropriate, but they have said that appropriate cannot be de minimis, which is the minimum. And that has schools sweating, right? Because they used to park kids and go, well, you know, we gave them a worksheet and, you know, we're educating them, but, you know, we don't really know what else to do. And the Supreme Court has said, no, that's not going to work, which has given more room for parents to sue and say that this is not appropriate. So here's the biggest piece of advice to you that I can give. While you're talking to the school, and you always want to make sure that you put things in writing, or if you're, let's say you pull up a drop off and the principal comes out and she says, oh, by the way, and whatever. You want to then follow that up with an email that says, dear principal, whatever, I just want to acknowledge that when we had the conversation by the drop off today and you said X, that's how you get everything in writing, right? But when you are having a disagreement with the school about something, it's very important that we learn the lingo here. Because I don't know if you have any expertise in anything, but you know how when you're talking about something that you know something about and somebody else chimes in and they use the wrong word and you go, okay, they don't know, right? Well, here's what the school will recognize, that you know something if you use the word appropriate over and over and over and over again. We as parents want to say, well, I just want what's best for my child. We are entitled to feel that. Don't feel bad about that. Just don't say it, because that's not what the law really provides for, to be honest. The law doesn't say, well, Johnny gets the best of everything. Because he has the qualifying diagnosis, he gets the best of everything. What the law says is that those boxes, it's got to be appropriate. And I looked up the word appropriate in dictionary after dictionary until I found one that said appropriate equals effective. And I would take that to every IEP meeting with me. But appropriate is the thing that you want to be asking for, and ask them questions. So if they say, well, what we'd like to do is this, and you can always say, help me to understand why you feel that that's appropriate. And you can say, I'm concerned because I don't think that that's appropriate. What we're working for here is to find the appropriate program for my child. Why is this one appropriate? We don't feel that it's appropriate. Hammer that word over and over and over again. Oh my gosh. Okay, even Denise, I'm so thrilled that you were back and said it's 6 miles away, not 6 hours away. That's much more appropriate, but you are not responsible for getting him there. If they want him to go, him or her, I'm sorry, I don't remember, if they want this child to go to a school 6 miles down the road, I want to talk a little bit about why, and wait till we get to LRE, and let's talk about that. But if you look at it and go, that is the best place, and if it's 6 miles, 6 miles isn't that far. 6 hours is craziness, right? An hour is craziness for your child to go. That's an hour each way that they lose from their education. Not appropriate. And we can argue that, right? 6 miles, you know, that doesn't feel like it's horribly far to me, but they've got to pay and they have to arrange the transportation for the child to get there. But before we even get there, it's possible that it's not the right place to be. Oh my gosh. She says, we need an advocate because they call me Big Mouth because I do my research. Well, first of all, they should not be calling you Big Mouth. But you should put your shoulders back and be proud, because if they are calling you Big Mouth to your face or behind your back, that means you're doing your job. But that is horrifying to me. Okay. Oh, Tilly, thank you so much for being here. And can I say that the things that we're talking about I'm talking specifically to the autism community, and I said that autism is a qualifying diagnosis, but there are many other things that are qualifying diagnoses, and all of those things will fit with what we're talking about, whether it's Down syndrome or anything. Oh, Lisa says appropriate is the word of the day. Yes. And she says to be proud that you get called a Big Mouth. I agree, but it's inappropriate that they are saying it. And I would bring a tape recorder to all IEPs, because you know what will happen? They'll stop calling you that. That is just inappropriate. Okay, so the second part, which is what we're getting to now, is that free appropriate public education in the least restrictive environment possible. That's that LRE. That's the next part of this, that once you understand and get the free appropriate public education, then the next thing I want to put in your backpack is an understanding of LRE, because that is also part of the language in IDEA. Free appropriate public education in the least restrictive environment. And that means if the child can be successful in the classroom with supports, which includes an aide, then this should be considered more appropriate than a special day classroom. All right, let's everybody take a breath right here, right now, because a lot of times you guys write in and say to me, I don't know how to fight for an aid because the school isn't offering it up, and we think it's what our child needs, and the school seems very reticent. We brought it up, and they're like, no, 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 he's going to be fine in the special day classroom. I want you to understand what the law says. The law says that if your child can be successful with an aid or other supports in a mainstream class, that is considered more appropriate than a special day classroom. So how do you start to argue for the aid? You go in and say, what made you decide that my child couldn't be successful in the classroom with an aid? Because you know what it is? Oh, they don't want to pay for the aid. It is easier for them to group all of our kids together in a special day classroom and have someone that is trained to be in the special day classroom. But that is not what's best for all of our kids. If you have a kiddo, and I certainly had this kiddo, that if he was around kids who stimmed, he would stim all day, and that is what he would do. If he was around kids who weren't stimming, he would focus on the lesson. And so putting him in a special day classroom was consigning him to never getting where he's gotten. And there are many, many, many reasons why kids won't do great in a special day classroom. There's only a handful of them where a kiddo would do better in a special day classroom. And I used to always argue, go for the inclusion, go for the inclusion. And then it was pointed out to me that if they don't do inclusion well, it isn't always better. But I feel that you got to be working towards it, right? Okay, and Macy says they denied your son an aid. I'm glad you're here because this is what we're going to continue to talk about. I think our LRE is, I got to give you these fun facts about IEPs really quickly. So an IEP is a legally binding document. So anything that is in the IEP, once you get it in there, they have to provide it. It's legal. Services in the IEP must be delivered, or you get a lawyer and they get sued and they pay, and people have gotten big money when they mess it up. I don't want to do that. I don't want to have to hire a lawyer and sue them because they didn't follow the IEP. But you can, and that's a motivator for the school. In order for a BIP to be considered part of the legal document, it has to be attached. On the first page of your IEP, there's a place somewhere, sometimes it's the bottom, sometimes it's the top, that says BIP attached. If you have a behavior intervention plan, make sure that box is checked. And if you have an IEP, today is the day to get it out. I know that just brought up a bunch of anxiety, like, oh my gosh, where is it? I'm going to ask you to do something this week. I want you to get a sheet protector and some magnets. Or it doesn't even have to be magnets. I want you to get a sheet protector, though, and find the IEP, put it in the sheet protector, and you can attach it with magnets to the side of the refrigerator or tape it inside of one of your kitchen cupboards so that you now know where it is, because you're going to refer to this on a regular basis, or you just need to know where it is for next year's, right? But I want you to find the IEP this week, and I want you to see, does it say BIP attached? This is what happens a lot of times, is that people go through the trouble to get the good behavior intervention plan, because that's really what protects your child at school. If your child's engaging in challenging behavior, and you've seen all those news stories about the kids who got taken away from school in handcuffs, or was zipped into I'm not making this up, zipped into a duffel bag as a way of handling his challenging behavior. Yeah. And that's still, I'm sure that there was a lawsuit, and that, somewhere down the line the parents are going to see money there. But if you want to prevent that kind of stuff from happening, you get a good behavior intervention plan and you check that box, and then it's legally easy peasy and people pay more attention to it. I won't say that it completely eliminates stupidity, but it sure cuts it down. Okay. But I said that there are reasons why the school doesn't want to pay. Here's in the depressing news. IDEA has never been fully funded. Not ever, still not today. And it was a big thing on the docket when people were running for office this last time. I came to you guys and I told you which candidates were saying that they would fully fund IDEA. And I have to tell you, Joe Biden said that he would fully fund IDEA, and and not only that he would do more than that he really had a really comprehensive plan. And I know that COVID has put a ginormous hole in that. But Mr. Biden, if you are President Biden, if you are listening, and Dr. Biden, his wonderful wife who is an educator, if you are listening, you made us this promise. And I'm asking you to uphold it, even though you've got COVID. I see that you're getting things done. How about this, right? But we all have to deal with the fact that it isn't fully funded as of today. And no one has, I don't, this is not a political thing. I don't care which party everybody is aligned with. Not a single side has fully funded it. So but Joe said he would. Come on, Joe. So they don't have enough money to. And I don't know if you've ever been in the position where you don't have enough money to pay all your bills, and what do? You rob Peter to pay Paul. Do not let your child be Peter. Just don't. But know that that's the problem. It's not that these people are just horrible and that they're trying to save money just for the purpose of not helping your child out. They literally don't have it. And they're going to have to take it away from something else. And they may even tell you what they're taking it away from. By the way, that's illegal for them to do that. But I've had it happen. I had a person come out and explain to me that because they were going to fund an aid for my child, that meant that the whole second grade wasn't going to get the computer lab. And I was like, I guess that's your problem. And let her know that that was inappropriate for her to be saying to me, that it's actually illegal for her to say that to me. And you got to fight for your kid. That's the bottom line. An IEP doesn't cover methodology, so you go, well, I'd like you to use this particular program, and your school will tell you, we don't have to do that. We just have to do something that's effective. And we have to demonstrate that the methodology that we're using is effective. And if you don't like the methodology that they're using, you got to be on them all the time and have them prove that it's effective. And remember that an IEP doesn't have to provide what's best. It only has to provide what is appropriate. Tilly says, how do we know if they will be successful if they right away get placed into a self-contained classroom? And I think that that's the problem, Tilly, is that what happens a lot of the time, and I don't mean to scare you, but they put them in the self-contained classroom, and then how can you know that it's successful? What you've got to do is ask for an IEP meeting and say, I want to go back and look at LRE. Use the excuse that he made a bunch of progress during the summer. And, like, what are they going to do? Challenge you on that? You can say, he made a bunch of progress over the summer. We've been working on, even if you didn't, you can say, we've been working on a bunch of different things, right? I hope you did. But he made a bunch of progress over the summer. We're aware of our LRE. And you start by saying, I want him included, and push to see what you can get. Can I get him included 10% of the time, just for this class, and start ramping it back up, because they will leave your child to be successful in that self-contained classroom right up until they tell you that they don't qualify for a diploma, that they're going to graduate and go to a work program. We don't want that, right? So push, 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 push. Okay, Parker says, my friend's brother, he couldn't handle transitions well. He tried to be in special ed classroom all day, but they wanted him to transition to electives like art, PE, and other electives. It got to the point where they called his dad to pick the kid up every time this happens. They wanted to keep her brother in school till he ages out, but the SPED teacher wanted him to graduate anyway. His parents ended up pulling him out of school due to it. Other friends of mine's kid had to get homeschooled due to aggressive behaviors. They suspended the kid multiple times and wanted to put the kid in alternative school. This is one school, one district. Yeah. Okay, let's take that line by line here, though. Some kids don't transition well. And so having to be pulled out to go to another classroom to go do something is cause for a meltdown. So we don't want to do that, right? A lot of times it's the opposite, that kids are in the mainstream classroom and they want to pull them out to go to OT, and they find that the kid can't regulate and come back to the classroom. So I want to say this, it has to be individualized. And for that kiddo, then what they should be working on is transitioning. And what I would have liked to have seen in this instance is that he be in one environment that's perfectly educational enriched, right? But that whatever he loves is in the thing that he's transitioning to. And then in order to transition back, that we find a second thing that he super loves that is only there when he transitions back. That we can help someone to deal with the sensory issues around transitioning, or we can do pull-ins where they don't have to leave the classroom to go to another environment, right? That's fixable. And it shouldn't be a reason to leave someone parked someplace and not having access to those other things, right? It requires people to think outside the box, and I find that in schools so much of the time anymore, they don't have the bandwidth. So it requires us to help them to learn how to think outside the box. And to say, if I told you every single time that my child was, that we were told, well, he needs to do it this way because the way, it won't work the way you want it to work, Shannon, because we've tried it before and it won't work, and that I pushed and pushed and pushed, and then later on they came back to me and said, oh my gosh, you were right. That did work for him. Now the irony is that then they try to push other kids into that, and that isn't what they need. It's called individualized for a reason. Okay. And then if your child is being pulled out of school because of aggression, it's very important that you know that if your child does something that's aggressive, they can be taken out of school for a 10-day suspension, but then there is a process that they have to go through to decide maybe the environment was not appropriate, and your child cannot be discriminated against if the aggression was as a result of their disability. So you need to get an advocate, though, to argue all of that. We are working toward full inclusion, maybe next year, 4th grade. The good news is we finally got a 1-to-1 aide this year. Mama, you worked that. Critical skills on his IEP. Yes, yes, yes. We're going to talk more about that. Lori says, sorry, but I came in late, but I'm facing this right now. The school district I'm trying to get my son in is having trouble getting into school because in his IEP it states he needs a self-contained classroom. Where we live, they don't offer self-contained classroom. According to his IEP, should I go against this just to get him in school? He's 2.5 weeks late to starting school. Okay, that is a denial of FAPE, and you need to look seriously at what you want to do next. I, of course, would love for you to go in with an advocate or a special ed attorney so that you don't have any missteps because he's already missed 2.5 weeks. But this is actionable. They're denying him his free appropriate public education. And you've got to put the brakes on that right now. And if they don't have first of all, I want to know why he has to have a self-contained classroom. But regardless, if that's really what you feel and that's what the experts felt that that's what is appropriate for him, then they have to provide it. That means that they have to make one for him. They have to hire a teacher who is appropriate and have a room for him, or they need to pay for you to go to another school. And I don't know which things you want, Lori, but not giving him access, they're denying him access. And those are the words that you need to be saying to them. You need to call an emergency IEP, and it's on them to figure it out. But you got to push for the meeting. And I'm going to give you an attorney reference here in just a second. Okay. Okay, things that are in the IEP, assessments, reports, recommendation. There's a whole segment that's just goals. We could spend a whole show on that. Then there's a whole other section that's on services, and that's where your aid would be if you had one. There's a whole section on accountability. Who is responsible for reporting this? A BIP, if it's attached. Again, that's a behavior intervention plan. And then there's an accommodations page. And if your child is age 14 to 16, depending on the state, you need to have the ITP, the individual transition plan, and you need to have that attached. Okay, he needs a self-contained classroom. He elopes and runs, and he's really behind on his resting. They're telling me he needs to be tested, waiting. No. I'm just going to say no like a dozen times. Then they have to provide, if they're saying we can't do anything until we have him tested, then they have to provide a tutor in your home or something. And you need to use the actual words. You are denying him, you have denied him for 2.5 weeks his free appropriate public education. Just say you're denying, this is a denial of FAPE right now. And if they're smart, they will understand that you can sue them right now. And yes, we have kids that are elopement risks. And that is a grave concern, and I'm glad they're taking it really seriously, but that doesn't mean that he stays home. We've done far too much work for that to be a thing. Oh my gosh, Lori, I'm so sorry, but it is time to get some help here. Okay, so we're gonna, here's a word to the wise on the IEPs and COVID. The Department of Education declared, even in COVID, schools, and here's the quote, remain responsible for ensuring that a free, appropriate public education is provided to all children with disabilities. And even if if they didn't, the school district owes the family compensatory education. They're going to call it comp ed. If at any point during COVID, your child was denied something that was in their IEP, maybe it was a tutor, maybe they had an aide, but then suddenly you were at home and you were on the computer with them and there was no aide because they said we can't provide the aide in your home, well, they owe you comp ed. Which means they owe you money or they owe you educational time or tutors or something, but you are owed. If your child was supposed to have speech and language during COVID and for 6 months they didn't, or they had less speech because they couldn't accommodate it in the way, maybe it was group and they couldn't do whatever, you have a case and you should be asking your school for comp ed. But there are some considerations here that it's a 2-year statute of limitations. So we are, so let me do the math on this. So we started in lockdown on March 13th of 2020. So if any services, so today is August 15th. So in those first 6 months, if you haven't applied for those are gone because you had 2 years to apply. But if on August 15th of 2020, your child was not getting services, you still have a case and you need to talk to a lawyer today. And they were handing out money and some places still are and some places have run out. So just know that, right? But I want you to know that the Department of Education said, even in COVID, this applies. But it normally applies during everything. It's just COVID was this extra thing. They don't have the psych report, and so they don't have a classroom for your child. No, sorry. The Department of Education has said they can't deny. There are no excuses, none. Here we go. Okay, if you need support, here was the site that I was telling you about, www.copaa.org. That is the Council of Parent Attorneys and Advocates. And it is all over the United States. I think there might be some for Canada. And they are, I can't speak to the fact that they're all good and they're all fabulous, but I can tell you that they are people who have a vested interest. That a lot of them are parents who have kids on the spectrum or with other disabilities. They've been through this as a parent. Some of them are attorneys, some of them are advocates. They are people that have a vested interest. So it's a better place to start than just calling lawyers. And if they can't help you, a lot of times they'll refer you to the person who can. Maynell says, do we talk to the school about comp ed? Yeah, I would. If you feel that you are owed comp ed, I would write an email to your team today and say, hey, we need to, you could, I almost would rather that you go to COPA and say, I need somebody to handle comp ed and here's how and why, because it might be quicker, but don't waste time. If you find you can't get somebody started, you could email the school today and say, just letting you know that we are asking for compensatory education and state what it is that, where they didn't provide, right? Or just ask for a meeting to discuss it. They're going to be like, what? But we did, and I died, and I don't know why you would say that, and but it's the law. Okay, so briefly about the ITP, that is that individual transition plan, and it must address 3 areas. This is, if in some states it's 14, in all states it is supposed to be in place by age 16. You know how you just have some things that trigger you? I get so mad because in most states what happens, if anything, they'll say, well, your child's turning 16, it's time for us to talk about their transition plan. No, that would be wrong. It's supposed to be in place on their 16th birthday. So if your child's 15, you want to ask them, hey, when is our meeting to discuss their ITP? And make sure that it gets attached to the ITP. And here are the 3 things it has to address. Where they're going to live when they are an adult, whether that's with you or with somebody else, and how that's going to work, where and how they will work, and who and what their support will look like. This is a mandatory program that is often missing or overlooked. That a lot, people talk about the cliff, parents all the time like, oh my gosh, we're the cliff, my child's 18 and they're graduating, or worse, my child is 21 and they're aging out of their services and we don't know what to do next. There shouldn't be a cliff. This program was put in place so that there should not be a cliff. You should start working on this when your child is 14, regardless of the state, but in all states, it has to be in place by age 16. Don't let them skinny out of this. And Lori says, would you recommend going that route or right to the school? I gotta be honest, for what it's going to cost you in headaches, I would rather see you work with somebody, an attorney advocate, if you can afford it. But some people can't. I couldn't early on. So you know what I would do? I would consult with attorneys and advocates, and I would consult with a lot of them. It's how I met Bonnie Yates. I went and got a free consultation and then took that information and I fought my way through everything. And then I try to share that information with you guys. But if you can, if I had it to do over again, I would have asked a rich relative, can I borrow some money because I want to save my stomach lining and my health. That's the truth. Okay, so, and we're going to go late. But this is what I really wanted to get to, what I thought we were getting to earlier. Let's take a minute here and talk about LRE, because this, a lot of times, is the whole shooting match, right? LRE is the least restrictive environment in which the student has a floor of opportunity in which to access the curriculum. Now, this was a part of the language, and I'm going to tell you, I cannot find it anywhere. I memorized this, but I cannot find it anywhere. And I've been making these mugs. These are hand thrown mugs, you guys. I will send a mug to the first person who finds the reference somewhere in all of IDEA. I cannot find it. But I know that that's the phrase because I memorized it, and they buried it deep because they don't want us to know. But you'll get a free mug. I will make you a special mug. You can tell me which colors you like, and I will send you a mug to the first person who can find the reference of where, like line by line, where it is, and a link to find it. But I will tell you that the schools must ensure that, and this language is on a bunch of websites, to the maximum extent appropriate, there's that word again, children with disabilities are educated with children who do not have disabilities. This, I can find you the links to everywhere. It's everywhere. Did you see that? Look at that. To the maximum extent appropriate, children with disabilities are educated with children who do not have disabilities. We're not supposed to be segregating them. Hello? But to the maximum extent appropriate. And special classes, separate schooling, or other removal of students with disabilities from regular education happens only if the student's disability is so significant that education in regular classes, even with the use of additional aids and services, cannot be achieved satisfactorily. Hello? This just makes me so mad because I don't think that to the letter and the extent of the law that this is looked at. And there's a page in your child's IEP where they will say, did we consider LRE in making our decisions? If, this has to be a place where you guys think really realistically about what is appropriate for your child. And if it is appropriate for your child to have an aid, fight. You will win. It might take a while, but our kids are segregated. Our kids are absolutely segregated, and they're segregated because IDEA isn't fully funded, and we can't allow it to happen. And I would always feel bad because I would go in and advocate for my son, and I would think about all the other kids who didn't have a parent who was there advocating for them or didn't know. And the deal that I made with myself is that I would advocate first for my child, and then I would advocate and let other parents know. which is why I'm sitting here talking to you guys now. But you don't know if you don't know, right? Advocate and spread the word. But you can fight and get an aid. If it's appropriate, you can get it. And you can argue that it's appropriate. I don't think I have ever seen somebody who really dug in and said, my child's getting an aid, fail. It might have taken 6 months, but, and you will succeed because you will find the way. People are gonna make you feel bad about it. Let them, right? You know what I always say, other people's opinions of my parenting is none of my business. Okay, but LRE, this is what's super important. And there is a consideration, there's even a part, I wished I'd put it in here, about that it should be in their home school unless it cannot be. So if they have designed some amazing program for your child, but it has to happen, you know, an hour and a half away, no, sorry, you got to create a new program that is close. 6 miles, I think they can argue that 6 miles can travel, but they're going to have to pay for it, Denise. That's just the long and the end. Yes, argue that the one-on-one aid is appropriate for your kiddo. And, you know, if worse comes to worse, what I did a lot of times is I said, well, you know, you don't know that it isn't. And so since LRE says to the maximum extent appropriate, and if we don't know, then you have to provide him with that chance. And then we made sure that he was successful with the aid. We just made sure of it. And that's a lot of what this is, right? Is making sure that your kids can be. Maynell says, I fought so hard for a one-on-one aid and still got denied. All of a sudden, the school started jumping hoops to accommodate my son, but it wasn't until I fought for the aid. Oh, yes. When you start asking for an aid, Maynell, and I think you've experienced this, they'll start offering you free swimming lessons. Right? Which you didn't ask for. They're like, oh, did you know you could have this? Did you know you could have that? Because on their menu, it's less expensive than paying for an aid all year long. But I don't, you know, they might have denied, but it's not over. Maynell, get back in there. And if you have to, you know, contact those COPA people and you can file due process and say, you know, my son is being denied LRE. They don't want that lawsuit. Because if word gets out that they lost an LRE, whoo, oh, that's not good. That's not good. And write to me personally if you want more specific advice, Maynell. Obviously, I'm not an attorney or, you know, I'm not able to do that. But if you want more information, write to me. I don't think it's that you have not been fighting hard enough. It might be that you got to fight a little bit longer, right? That you're on the path to it. Denise is back. And Tilly, I don't understand the response we received. I don't. Was my kid needs a good foundation before LRE? No. Like, I'm sorry, but I'm often gobsmacked by the like incredible things that these people will say. No, that is a denial of FAPE. No. If I don't even, this is it, you've broken me. I have no words. I can't even, no, it's horrible. You have to, so Denise, email me Shannon at autism-live.com. And Tilly, I'm happy to get in there and help you too. Shannon at autism-live.com. But I am always amazed at the things that they will say to parents that they try to make sound reasonable that are completely unreasonable if you understand the law. He can't, no. What they can say is, you know, here's why we think your child won't be successful even with an aid in the classroom. And here are some things that I've heard that I'm like, yeah, okay, I can see that. Your child takes their pants down and takes a dump in the middle of the classroom. No, and they're not able to prevent them, and we haven't been able to get them to stop doing that. Then yes, no, they need to be in a self-contained classroom. That's a health hazard, and it's extremely disruptive, right? Your child, is self-injurious when they are around more than 3 other people. Yep, nope, then you should be in the self-contained classroom. There are reasons why you wouldn't, but saying, this whole thing of, well, we're gonna start with a special day classroom and we're gonna work up to have them be mainstream, I'm just gonna tell you, it's a lie. I am a former public school teacher. I have been on the other side of those IEPs, And here's what you do is you say, can you give me some data about how many of your kids go from a full day program and then become fully mainstream? Can you give me data about how effective your method has been at getting to LRE? Is it working for you? They don't have the data, and it didn't work, and it's not going to work. So no, get right back in there and tell them no. Okay. I'm sorry, the top of my head just came off and flew around the room for a second. Okay, so fight for the LRE. It's within your rights, and don't let them deny it. That's actionable. Okay, so what are the support services? Because this is a big deal. If we're going to do the IEP, because the IEP has services that you can do, what are some of the things that you can get? And notice I have question marks because every year I learn from parents, I'm like, oh, you know, what they got, oh, I got this. And I go, I didn't know you could get that. So obviously you can get an instructional aid, right? They have those in classrooms all the time. And an instructional aid is somebody who helps you with your schoolwork, right? You can also get a behavioral aid. And they, you know, there have been times when I've seen somebody who functions as both, but more and more with insurance, they're kind of dividing these up and classifying, going, oh, the behavioral aid can't help you with anything that's instructional. They can't teach. It makes me crazy. But know the system and work the system, right? And there are people, we just had a dad who was on who talked about the fact that his son needed a behavioral aid in the classroom to do ABA so that he could be safe and that the other kids could be safe. So know what you're asking for. How about a recreational aid? I didn't know that that existed until I asked them to put a goal during recess because my son was struggling to find other kids to play with him. He knew to go and ask somebody else to play with him, but when they would say no, then he would just be despondent and walk away and not have that interaction. And that was part of his, you know, getting to the point where he was going to be successful in college, right? And so we asked them to put a goal in recess, and so then they said, oh, well, he would have to be evaluated to get a recreational aid. And was I okay with that? We said, sure. We didn't know that existed. They evaluated him and found, look at that. He was eligible for a recreational aid, and so he got one. And oh, are they the most fabulous things ever? Your kiddo probably is eligible for speech and language therapy, probably is eligible for occupational therapy, probably is eligible for adaptive PE. Most schools also have something that they call resource, which is a place that they can go to get one-on-one instructional aid or to get support, or like a study hall. Depending on their age. You might be eligible for tutors. Did we know that? We've certainly found that out in COVID. How about if you have an older kid, what about having somebody who is a note-taking aide? I didn't put it on here, but you can have somebody who just helps with executive functions, which is helping them to remember when are their assignments due and what day, and did I hand in my homework? There's also medical support. What else? I mean, like, the list is endless here. But here are some of the things that, you know, you might be asking for. But I want you to think, I wanted you to know about these things, but I want you to think about reverse engineering. What would your kiddo need to be successful? If you could design any educational program for your kiddo to be successful, what would it look like? Now, I'm a former teacher, so I had an inkling of what I thought it would look like, and you may not. I've had other parents who said to me, well, I don't know enough about teaching and education and classroom setup to know what would work. Ask somebody. Ask somebody you know that's a teacher. Ask somebody that you know, or ask all your friends and go, who does special education, or who's really good? Like, you know, watch somebody who's a tutor work with kiddos that's really fabulous, and your mind goes, I didn't know that my kiddo could potentially respond to this. But if you're working with your ABA team, ask them, what would be the perfect environment for my child? Don't be afraid to ask. You're not tied to whatever they tell you. Like, you can say no down the road, but I think it's okay to ask the question, what would be the perfect environment? What would be the perfect supports for my kiddo? And then can I get that? Or how close can I get to that? How would this work? And it's okay to dream a little bit. Yes, when you go in, you're not going to ask them for what's best, you're going to ask them for what's appropriate. But remember, if you're saying, what would set up my student for success? What would be the environment in which my student would learn? Maybe that is what's appropriate, right? Okay. Wait a second. Tilly, what did you ask that they said was private info? I'm not following that thread, Tilly. Which is private info? Because that's scaring me. If you asked something and they said it was private info, I want to know what that was. Thank you, Alicia. It's so good to have you here. Denise says she did have many mistakes in her panties. They called me the big mouth lady, but when I threatened to go to an open board meeting, she's in the class with a restroom. How about that? Because, that's a great point, because sometimes the reason why somebody is having an accident is because of the environment, right? So I love this. So they found a classroom with her that has a restroom right there. That I like. Okay. Oh, Tilly, I'm so glad that you're here. And the recreational aid, whoo, I didn't even know it existed. But it's a really, really good thing. And can I tell you what happened with a lot of these things is that, so we said, yeah, we want the recreational aid. The recreational came in and our teacher was like, what? Because the recreational aid is so good. And she came in and said, well, I'm not just going to go be with your child. We need to teach your child to be social with the other children. And often I find that part of the problem is that the other children aren't socializing appropriately with him. You think? And so she said to the teacher, I'm going to come into your classroom twice a month and I'm going to play games with your kiddos and teach them how to be inclusive. And because I had a good teacher, she was like, really? And what am I doing during that time? And the aide said, I just want you to sit there and watch and notice how your kids interact. Teachers, good teachers are like, oh, I just get to sit and watch you do something and learn from you? Yeah, please. Like, why wouldn't you want to do that, right? And so this aide came in and the teacher came back to me and said, I really want to thank you because how I teach has been changed forever because I saw kids that I couldn't get be included as a result of what that person did. So sometimes you advocate for your child and you get a win for people for years to come. So like advocate. Okay. Oh, Tilly, I see that you asked about past student success from going from self-contained classroom to LRE, and they told you that was private information. Yeah, sure, if you're asking for their names and what, their addresses were, but just ask for data. Say, oh, I'm not asking for personal information, I'm asking for data. And then when they say, well, we can't give that to you because it's private information, I want to suggest to you that you find the opportunity to ask this during an IEP when you have a tape recorder going. Because I had this same problem that there was this woman who I asked this question. They wanted, after everything that we had done and my son had been included, when he went to make the change to junior high, they wanted to send him not to his home school, to a contained classroom where he would never change classes and never have different teachers for his different subjects. And he couldn't take his honors classes, so on and so forth. And there were no girls in the class. And I said, no, not appropriate, sorry. And they were like, oh, but he'll be bullied. You don't know. It's so hard. And I said, you're telling me you don't want my child to get his free appropriate public education because you can't control bullying? No, that's not an argument to deny him his FAPE, right? But the woman was like, but think about it, it's just so much better. And he eventually will transfer in mainstream. And I said, fabulous. Is that a part of your program? Yes, of course. I said, please show me the data of how successful that's been. And she was like, oh, we don't have data. And I said, you don't have data? Okay, then you can't prove it's effective. So we're back to square one. And she was like, oh, but I mean, many kids have. I said, get me the data. If you don't have the data, go find how many kids did, make me the data, show me the data. If you're saying that it's a reason for my child to do it, then you have a responsibility to show me how it's appropriate. Show me how it's appropriate. And she just couldn't. And so I got her in an IEP meeting and had the tape recorder. And I was like, do you have that data I asked for? And she was like, we don't have data on that. And I said, so I'm just being clear with you. You're saying that you have no data on this program? And she said, yeah, no, I have no data. And I said, then it's not, you can't tell me that it's effective. And I have data that my son does well, when he has support, and the law says, and he went to junior high with an aide that was just for executive functions. And then all the teachers afterwards said, we had no idea this was possible, and it was so good. Okay. Ask for the proof. Show me the data. Yes, Lisa. It's not the money, show me the data. But you can say, show me the comp ed. There is that. I am the big mouth lady, Denise. I have been called that. So we went over what some of the services were. Now let's talk about accommodations. Now, depending what age your child is, this list could be endless, right? And I tried to put a great mix of things, whether your child is, 5 years old or 14, but preferential seating. If your kiddo is sat in the back of the classroom because they don't want him to be disruptive, but the girl in front of him has a ponytail and he can't focus because of the ponytail, that isn't going to work. So preferential seating, more time on tests and assignments, study guides, visual schedules, and prompts. So if your kiddo needs to be prompted to go to the bathroom, maybe, we have a little thing, a card that shows the sign that they have to make when they want to ask to go to the bathroom that we can just point to and say, do you need to do that, right? Modified curriculum, modified materials and tests, set of books for home, alternative testing locations. Be careful with that one. A lot of people like that so their child can be someplace quiet. My son didn't do well with transitioning, and he would get focused on doing something, and so when they would take him someplace else to test, he wouldn't do as well on the test because he'd be checking out all the new sensory stuff. So, and then I had to fight with them because they were so used to giving alternative testing that they continued to do it after I specifically put it in the IEP that he not have alternative testing, that it disrupted him. And I had to go 16 rounds with him. You're never done, right? How about frequent and requested breaks? Or a sensory diet, that your child is allowed to have a sensory toy that helps them to focus. Access to keyboards or calculators or sensory items. But what else? People get all different kinds of accommodations. They'll go down, like most schools have like a checklist of things that they'll offer you, but when you get with other autism parents, like it's so great to take a break and not talk about autism, but I really think that everybody should, like every school should have like a special education tea where everybody just gets together and compares and says, what accommodations do you get in your IEP? Oh, I never knew that. I'm going to ask for that. But this is why the school doesn't tell you, because you'd ask for more thing. Okay, show me the money, LOL. When I tell the school to subscribe, they are going to shrink. What subscribe? I don't know. Denise, tell them what you want them to subscribe to. I'm not sure I followed that. Lisa says that her son has a special desk. Yes, some of our kids get, if they have trouble focusing, some of them have those ball chairs. Be careful. I only advocate the ones that have a base so that they don't roll and hit their head or that somebody can't push it out from under them. But sometimes having that sensory input of sitting on a ball, really helpful, helps work the core. They're forced to sit up. Yeah, there's all kinds of things. Special pencils, right? That can all be under special education. Okay, thank you, Laura. So thrilled that you're here. Okay, now let's talk for a second about the BIP. The BIP is the Behavior Intervention Plan. It's a legal document when it's attached to the IEP. It has to be checked. You can work so hard in the BIP, and if you don't check that box, it's not part of a legal document. And it's the plan for dealing with the challenging behavior. I really want to recommend that it's available again now. It wasn't for the longest time, but if you go to skillsforautism.com, they have something called the BIP Builder. And when you go to a meeting at your school, I really recommend that you have that. It's going to save you time and headaches because what it does is it's all tied to science. And because in a good BIP, it's going to have a couple of different elements into it. It's going to define what the behavior is that is challenging. It is going to already have gone through a process that's called a functional behavior assessment where they have figured out why is that behavior happening. Is it happening because the child doesn't have access to a bathroom? then that's going to be very different than if the child is doing it for attention. You know what I'm saying? So that's called the function of the behavior has to be defined in the behavior intervention plan. And then they have to come up with an antecedent modification, something that's done before the challenging behavior happens. And they have to come up with a consequence strategy if it happens, right? And this should be tied to science. The science is in on most of these things, and we know what's effective. And a lot of times I find that people like want to be creative. Great, be creative, but be based in science. So years ago, this is how ironic this is. My son would engage in challenging behavior when asked to write. He hated writing. He wasn't, you know, we're still finding out all of the things, but one of the things was his eye coordination. He couldn't, what he saw and what was happening on the paper with the pen didn't jive in his head, and it was really aversive for him, right? And so he would act out. Anytime he would be asked to write something, he hated it, and he would act out. And so, you know, we're creating BIPs for it, and at one point, they came up without us in a team, in a room. The psychologist said, here's the BIP, we've found what the function is, whatever, and I put it into my BIP builder, my skills BIP builder, and warning signs come up and say, this, if the function is this, which you put in, this is not an appropriate consequence strategy. This will not be effective. And I was like, what? Oh, and then was able to go back to the team and go, no, you gave me a BIP that's not right. And it should be this. And then they got rid of that psychologist. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, but I would not have known that if I didn't have the BIP builder. So that's skills for autism. I think it's a really good thing. But if your child is engaging in challenging behavior at any point, a note comes home and says, you know, your child got in trouble today because of X, ask them to do the functional behavior assessment and ask them to convene to do a BIP. It's important. But it's important that they find out what the function of the behavior was first. I see you said our son's BIP is huge. Well, because you might have several. For each challenging behavior, there would be a different intervention plan. So the BIP is the behavior intervention plan. It's the plan for what to do when the challenging behavior comes. So if your child, let's say that if there's a loud noise, your child hits themselves, right? Well, we don't want to just like go, well, I hope that works out, right? That's not going to work. We want to figure out, okay, why is that happening? And we come up with an antecedent modification about what to do so that he doesn't hit himself. And if he does start to hit himself, how do we intervene, right? And how do we do that safely and effectively and quickly? And everybody is a part of the plan, and everybody understands what it is, and then it becomes a part of their individual education plan. For the person who said that their child elopes, your child is eloping for a reason. And it might be multiple reasons, but they're eloping for a reason. We know that our kids do things for a reason. It's not just willy-nilly, no matter what anybody tells you, it isn't. There is a reason why they're doing it. If we begin to understand what the reason is, then we can come up with a plan to intervene. They can have things in place so that maybe the thing that's triggering the need to elope doesn't happen. But always with elopement, we have got to have consequence strategies in place so that we have safety measures so that he can't get out, and if he does get out, how we prevent him from being lost. This is locked gates, this is alarms, this, you know, so many things, right? Super duper important, but BIPs are for any challenging behavior. Behavior intervention plan. Okay. Somebody says that their son starts to take off his clothes when he's tired, so that would need a BIP and touches others. Absolutely. And it's incumbent upon us as parents to be forthcoming with, especially if your kiddo is starting school or starting a new year now, to say, here, you know, here's something that my child will do. And if you already know what the function of the behavior is, great, tell them. They may not listen to you. They might do their own functional behavior assessment. That's not bad because they might find out more about it than you even found out about. But there's a reason why he takes off his clothes. Now, it might be that he's hot. It might be that when he takes off his clothes, everybody goes, oh, something's happening, and there's a whole bunch of attention. It might be that he takes off his clothes because he knows as soon as he takes off his clothes, they're going to take him out of the classroom and he's going to get a break. It could be so many different things, right? But he's doing it for a reason, and he is getting some sort of a reward for it. So whatever that reward is, we want to figure out how for him to get that reward without taking his clothes off. So if he needs a break, and that's why he did it, we want for him to be able to just hold up a card that says, I need a break, and we want to create a safe space for him where he can go and set a timer and he gets 10 minutes to play with a Lego or do whatever so he doesn't take his clothes off, right? And if he does take his clothes off, he does not get a break. That we just keep, and we can also make clothes that he can't get off, right? I've seen parents that have had to, sew the buttons up so that he can't get them off. Or it just makes it harder for it to be gotten off so that somebody can intervene and, help him to get his needs met before he gets the shirt off. You know what I'm saying? Exactly. He used to use the bathroom and he's tired and he gets a rest. But if we build in that, and if you say to a good teacher, if he gets tired, he's going to take his clothes off to get a rest. So instead, the behavior intervention plan, and they'll go through the whole thing, the behavior intervention plan is if we see that he's engaging in these behaviors, that we will hold up a prompt and say, do you need a break? And so he asks for the break, and we reward him and go, good job asking for the break, and he goes and gets the break. And now he no longer needs to take the clothes off. We create the safe space. And for, especially in the younger grades, saying to them, listen, my kid is going to need breaks. What's the schedule that we're going to do that on, and where do they get to go, and who's supervising them during the breaks? All of those things can be in the BIP, right? For my son, I used to always tell teachers, I would say my son has a very heightened sense of justice. And if he wants to be heard when there's a heightened sense of, so if you're picking on a kid and he's being punished and my son saw a piece of the scenario that you didn't see, he's going to want to talk to you about it right then. And if you say, I'm not talking to you, he will melt all the way to the ground. And that what you need to do is say to him, we've learned this over the years, what you need to do is say, I hear that you have something to say about this, and I am going to listen to you. I have to do this first, but then I am going to listen to what you have to say. Then he can contain himself to wait until later to be able to do that. But if he feels that justice has been thrown out the window, Katie bar the door, there is nothing like that you can do to help him. He just, Now this is when he was little. This is not him anymore. Now he communicates his took us off. But we got there through looking at all of these things. Okay, phrases to remember. Denial of FAPE. If you are being denied your free appropriate public education, you say, excuse me, this is a denial of FAPE. Oh, that changes the conversation right there if you say that to them. Excuse me, this is denial of FAPE. Denial of least restrictive environment, which is a part of denial of FAPE. And I think many of you have identified that that's a phone call you need to make today. That we're not in compliance with the IEP. If it says in the IEP that your child gets speech services and you are 2 weeks into school and they go, oh, we don't start that until the second month, I am sorry. We are not in compliance with the IEP. The IEP doesn't say that we start those services later. They're entitled to have this many hours per week. It says it in the IEP. That includes week 1, folks. So, but I see schools do that all the time. Oh, we don't do that in the first 6 weeks. Where is that written? It's not. It's in the IEP that they get this many services per week often. Check your IEP. That's why you got to know where it is. Put it on the cabinet or the refrigerator. We're out of compliance with the IEP is another way that you can phrase it. And if they change anything, like you made the IEP last year and they said your child was going to do this or that or whatever, but then we changed our program, they have to give you prior written notice. And if they didn't, you can say we weren't given prior written notice, and they should be calling their lawyers. Okay, so Laura says, what I see for Skills for Autism is like $79.99 a month, and that's a lot for me right now. Yes, that's if you're buying the whole entirety of Skills. I would suggest that you call them and ask them and say, there's a separate thing that is for the BIP builder, and I would suggest that you call them, tell them that you're a parent, tell them that I sent you. They may or may not, it's new people over there, I don't know those people. But tell them that I sent you, ask them what it would cost you just to get the BIP builder because it's significantly less than that. And I also would tell you that if you know, I couldn't have afforded $79.99 when my son was young and in intervention. There was no way that I could have afforded that. But I have heard that Autism Care Today has reopened its website and is accepting grant applications. And one of their favorite things to do is give grants for skills. You know why? Because they know that it's really effective and it's super inexpensive for them. Rather than give you, you know, $5,000, you know, for a doctor's appointment, which, you know, might be really beneficial as well, but to pay $80 for you to have access to something is infinitely less expensive for them. So that's Autism Care Today. Their website is it's ACT-Today, so ACT-today.org, and I believe that they're taking grant applications right now. I wonder if I need a behavioral aid and recreation aid in addition to the one-on-one gonna ask. Well, I think it's really important, like, they're not gonna designate for you whether it's an instructional aid or a behavioral aid. Nobody talks about it that way until we start talking about the funding. So I think it's important for you, if you're asking for an aid, think about what you're asking the aid for. And then you have to ask yourself, is that an instructional aid or is that a behavioral aid? I would not use those words at the IEP or with a school official unless they say, oh, we don't do that. Then I would haul it out. Because the hope is that you'll get somebody who straddles the line. That's really what's best for your child. And so we just call it a one-on-one aid. Right? But if you start asking them for something and they say, well, get the aid first. But if you start saying, well, can the aid help with this? And all of a sudden they go, well, our aid can't do that. Our aids, our funding isn't for that. Then say, oh, well, then maybe we need another aid for that. I would advocate get that one-on-one aid first. When you have that, follow the same path that I did and give them a goal that is for recreation time, because you have the right when you go to IEP meetings to say, I'd like to recommend this goal, right? And then they're going to tell you, well, but he doesn't have an aid, then there's nobody who can take that data, and then say, well, then I think we should have him evaluated for a recreational aid. My fear is that if you go in and say, I need an instructional aid, a behavioral aid, and a recreational aid, they're just going to say you're unreasonable. You're not at all, but you might have to build to those things. That's what worked for me. But get the aid first. That's the biggest, and once you get the aid, everything else is so much easier. Then you can definitely start talking to them about what the goals are on the playground. Yeah, Lisa says, don't want to get too greedy too soon. Yeah, it's not that. It's terrible because, in the perfect world, we would just go in and say, here's what my child needs. Can I just have that? And that would be the perfect world. And if we ever, hello, politicians, if we ever get IDEA fully funded, I mean, that's a real possibility. I'm sure they'll find some other way to gum it up. But until we do, it's always going to be a problem. It's not you. Your breath doesn't smell. It's not that your kid isn't super cute or is wearing the wrong shoes. It's that they don't have the money to do it. And they sort of judge, like, is this a parent who's going to work with us? Is this a parent who's going to push? And you want to be in the category of a parent who's going to be a big mouth, never going to shut up, not going to give up on their kid, and knows the law, and that they're not going to be able to push around, but that is also going to work with them, and who's not unreasonable and not asking for the sun and the moon and the stars. Ask politely, as Lisa says. And yes, Lisa, unfortunately, a great deal of it is about the money. I think you'll find people on the journey that that's not the case, and those are the people you cling to, who genuinely want to see kids do well, but what helps them to get involved is when they get a better sense of their kid, and they only get that through us. Because unfortunately, the people that the funding strings are tied to are people who are not in the classroom anymore. Like, they may never meet your kid. I used to take a picture of my son in a little plexiglass and I would bring, I was like Little Red Riding Hood. I had a little basket with the napkins, and you know what was big then was with Desperate Housewives, and so I would pretend I was Brie, and so I would bring the little basket with the muffins, and I would have drinks for everybody. I would bring the carafe of coffee from Starbucks, and the brownies and the muffins and everything, and I would have the picture of my son, and I would say, "This is to remind us why we're here." Oh my goodness, I was a crazy woman. You know, but everybody knew I was going to bring donuts or something to an IEP. Okay. Oh my gosh, we still have a slide and we're 30 minutes over. We do have an amazing special ed staff and director. Yay, I'm happy to hear that. And Bree, yes, be in the Bree. Let's all be Bree. Okay, here's my last bit of advice, because Traven says we're a half an hour over. Work the problem. Don't let the problem work you. You know, when you make up your mind that you're going to be an on-it parent, there's not a due date and not a done date. So you just continue to work the problem and you don't give up. And there is not a done date. Maybe graduation, but then they go off to college. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And if you exhaust yourself in the first go round, you got no place to go. And parents get sick. I was one of them. Don't do that. But also, don't allow yourself to get paralyzed. Have somebody to be your buddy in this, that if you're like, oh, I'm really avoiding it. I got to write to the school and I got to do this. You know, set yourself a fail-safe so that you don't get paralyzed. Maybe it's somebody that you're like, give yourself enough time and say, you know, by next Tuesday, I have to make this phone call and I super don't want to, so that you don't get paralyzed. You are going to drop balls. Can you please accept that that is going to happen? And when you drop the ball and you realize that you don't let that paralyze you, go, okay, drop that ball, let's pick it back up. And when you need to, ask for help. Be nice as much as you can, but know what the line is. My son, when he was in junior high, he had in his accommodations, because of his writing issue, they allowed for him to type all of his assignments, which meant that they gave him a computer. They didn't want him to be on his home computer because we said, we'll buy him a laptop. Oh no, then he'll have access to all these other things we don't want him to have access for. We don't want to be responsible. If a kid pours something on the computer, it has to be the computer that we provide. Okay, fine. He goes, does 1 year, comes back the second year, and he goes to school, and I'm like, you know, why are you handwriting? Well, they don't know where they put my computer. And I call the person at school and they're like, yeah, we're looking for it. We should, you know, it's first week of school. And I said, okay, it's important that you find that for him. Should I send his computer? No. We'll find it. We'll find it. And so now we're in week 2 and no computer shows up. And I check in and I'm like, what's going on? They're like, no, it's fine. And then I woke up in week 3 and I said to my son, I said, did they ever find your computer? And he was like, no, they still haven't found it. And I was like, oh, I can't believe it's week 3. Who am I that I let this happen, right? And it becomes personal. And so I dropped my son off at school. I parked my car in the parking lot. I asked my husband if I could borrow his phone. He was like, what are you going to do? And I was like, stay calm. And I said, I just need your phone. And I waited until all the kids were in class, and I went into the office where all the little ladies knew me, and I said, I need to speak to somebody right now. I have my lawyer on this phone, and I have, IDEA on this phone, and you are you're denying him FAPE, you're out of compliance on his IEP, and I'm not going away from this spot until someone gives my son a computer. Because this is a denial of it. I said it loudly so that everyone in the office heard, and the principal came out of her office and went, what is happening? But I wasn't yelling and I didn't threaten anybody, but I had 2 phones and I slammed them on the desk and I said, not leaving until this is fixed. And do you know how long it took them to get his computer? 15 minutes. And everybody goes, what a win. And I go, what a disaster. Because that meant they could have found it in 15 minutes, and there were 3 weeks where my son did not have access. I could beat myself up about it, right? And I do sometimes, right? But you got to move on. You got to move on. We do what we can when we can, but we have to advocate for our kids. It's our job. It's job number 1. So do what you got to do, you guys. Thank you, Tilly, for the encouragement. Special Circumstance Instructional Aid, SIA, the name of the assessment when you are requesting it with the district. Okay, I didn't know that. Thank you, Maynell. Thank you, Dark Angel. Our school couldn't do that, so we decided to do online charter school, and we've had a lot of success with them. I hope the school is paying for that. They should, they better. And that's right, Lisa, you got to do what you got to do. And she sent me a fire symbol. Okay, Trayvon's going to get the hook. This went way longer than we planned, but super important. Can I tell you something else that's important? Tomorrow, Dr. Grampiche and I have talked endlessly with you guys about what the difference is between good ABA and not good ABA. And we are going to do the definitive show tomorrow on what are the signs that you can look at to be able to tell the difference between good ABA and bad ABA. We want to make an official record of our thoughts, both of us, on that. So that is tomorrow. We are not going to be taking questions live because we're going to do a follow-up show. So we're going to be asking you to write in your questions based on what we say. But I want you to know that in that respect, the chat is not going to be live tomorrow because we need to focus to get through that. But we will address all of the questions that you send in the following week. So please tune in. We do care about your interaction, but it's just going to be a little tape delayed for the reaction. But please tune in for that because I think it's one of the most important conversations that we need to be having right now. And I keep coming back to the fact that if everybody knew what good ABA looked like, everybody would be all over ABA. And if more people knew, whether it's the providers or the parents or self-advocates, we would be in a much better place. So we're going to give the 101 on the difference between the two. Lori, wow, you made my head spin with information. I had no idea. I'll replay this. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Please write it. If you have questions about anything that we said here, please write in. What's the best way to send in questions? Honestly, there's a couple of different ways that you can send in questions. You can send them directly to me, Shannon, at autism-live.com. And in that way, you can write as much as you want, and I can respond back to you because you emailed me, Shannon at autism-live.com. If that doesn't work for you, you can always write in questions on autism-live.com. There's a chat at the bottom, but I have no way of knowing who you are. I can't respond back to you. But if you really want to ensure, I don't tell your name ever to anybody anyway, but if you really want to ensure anonymity, that's a good way to go. autism-live.com, go to the chat, put it in there, but I can't respond back to you directly. All right, we're all out of time, but I love you all. It is such a privilege to be on this journey with you. I know how much you are working every day to be the best possible advocate for your kiddos, and you're doing a great job. And there are many, many rewards in doing that. So I respect and acknowledge what you're doing and hope that I can just be helpful in packing your backpack full of things that are useful. We'll be back tomorrow for that really special episode of Ask Dr. Doreen. Until then, give your kiddos a hug for me. And if today is the first day of school, make sure you take them someplace fun to do something that's super fun for them and commemorate it after school today. Take that moment, if it's the arcade, the swimming pool, something, like let them know what they did today going to school was a good job and reward them for it, all right? We'll be back tomorrow. Bye-bye for now. If you found anything helpful in this video, please give us a like. In fact, make sure that you smash that subscribe button on YouTube and give us a like on Facebook. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Instagram for important updates. And please download our free podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much. See you next time.